start.
Okay, great. So I look at you, right?
Yeah, look at me.
Okay, good. That's much more comfortable.
Richard, thank you for doing this. Can you answer a couple of questions for Macedonian Information Agency? My first question is, in your opinion, how long the suspension of the EU integration of the Western Balkans could last? Is it realistic that the EU and Brussels can step in and start the accession talks, let's say, in spring?
Oh, wow, in the spring. Well, thank you for the question, Boris. As I indicated in my remarks today, I'm not particularly optimistic it could happen as soon as the spring. This starts to get, I mean, when I look at this, my timeline, or how I would see the possibility of the suspension being lifted and talks resuming. Yes, the Commission put forward its reformed methodology. It's being considered right now, so there are substantial issues that will be raised. And I think I would expect that if we're talking about genuine reform at a substantive level, then that takes more than a couple months. You know, if they're serious about expanding in a different way, then what I've seen of the EU in the past is that that's not a couple months, because the Commission just dropped its reports recently, but rather that's something that's going to extend for the next couple months. But outside of the substance of the reform methodology and how that may come out, you know, there are questions of, one, internal politics in major member states, and how, for example, French elections may be impacted by a president that is seen as perhaps firmly or significantly advocating for EU expansion. Germany right now is still trying to figure out what's going to happen in respect to a post Merkel republic. And all of this is probably not all the questions about expansion at this point are going to have those substantive dimensions, but there's also going to be a lot of domestic politics involved, which is why, so going back to my point, which is why I'm not confident when people talk like, well, maybe by spring or summer. I'm like, that would be great. And if everyone agrees and there's substantive reforms that are beneficial for the people of the Balkans, awesome. I just don't think it's going to happen that soon.
We know that the government proposed snap elections in the spring in Macedonia, yes. And do you think that the government will be overturned if there is no any further progression in accession of the country?
It's an important question.
Question about the elections.
Yeah, I think it's. Well, certainly my own experience as American after 2016, we're all very cautious when we make predictions about electoral outcomes. And I can't, obviously I'm not Macedonian, and I can't claim or presume to understand exactly how Macedonian voters think. But here's what I understand. What I understand is that Macedonians see themselves as part of Europe. They are Europeans. They want to be integrated in European institutions and in transatlantic institutions like NATO. And when I look at not just Macedonians, but people throughout the region, and you start to talk about like, well, wouldn't it be great to be aligned with Russia? Or how about we have like, a deeper partnership with China? It doesn't seem to resonate with people that identify first and foremost as part of being Europeans and part of being a greater European community. One that has been, the parts of which have been most successful, secure, and prosperous are those that have been more closely aligned with the transatlantic alliance, like NATO, or like various other partnerships that have grown over the years as a consequence of European and American cooperation.
So it's a matter of preference, how citizens would see the importance of this alliance and how they will react.
It's a question of preference, because it's a preference of what kind of future do you envision for yourself, your family, and your community.
Because we know that if there is a backtrack of the Prespa agreement, it means that that this future of Macedonia would look
dimmer. Yeah. People may vote in a way to. It's often a very emotional experience, and people may vote for parties that don't have the same transatlantic vision. I think that doing so, that's going to be more of an emotional vote. Basically, like, you said that we should do this, we did it, and now, we just got, to put it nicely, we got left holding the bag. And the parties that were seen as having made those promises and managed that, they're probably going to take a hit. It's unfortunate. It's through, in my estimate, no fault of their own, but rather some mismanagement, as I indicated, as to how this could have rolled out, this suspension process. But nonetheless, it's my guess is that the Western Democrats are going to take a hit, but I don't see them being down and out for the reasons that I stated. I think that the anger and disappointment, at least for now, can be contained and be temporary, and hopefully there can be other avenues by which Macedonia can get back on track to being more integrated in Europe and the transatlantic community.
And my last question, can you tell us more about this new Anglo-American partnership? How it can help the countries like North Macedonia and Albania? Is it like an alternative for the Russian or Chinese influence in the region?
I think Boris, that's one way of characterizing it. That it is an alternative. So apropos your previous question, so the EU has said, okay, so we're suspending talks, and there's a lot of disappointment and anger and frustration amongst many people in Western Balkan states. And one of the reasons that my co-author, Ray Fajevic, and I wrote this paper was that, well, okay, so if the EU isn't going to do it, who's going to? Because it's certainly not in our greater transatlantic security interest for Southeastern Europe to be a playground, if you will, for simply China and Russia. The EU has their reasons that they've suspended, and they want to work it out, but we can't just leave the space open. And so part of what we talk about in the paper is what we've seen since 2017, increasingly, that the United Kingdom has shown that it's concerned. And the as to first and foremost physical security, but also development in the region, particularly in Bosnia. Both the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany, as you're well aware, in North Macedonia, were integral in pushing for Macedonia's membership into NATO, which I think is one of the greatest things that's happened for Macedonia in recent history. There's been a lot of good things, but that's certainly one of them. So, if Brussels needs to go figure their own things out, fine. Maybe the Brits and Americans can together try to figure out a way to make sure that, all right, we've seen a lot of progress. These people are Democrats. They want to be part of Europe. They want to be part of the transatlantic community. Let's help them realize that, rather than say, well, see what you can get from Russia and China. That's not in the people of the Western Balkans' interests, and that's not in our interests either.